Bloody knows about that.
Welcome, everybody, to the March 18th, 2025 meeting of the Tompkins County Legislature. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have the roll call of members, please?
Deborah Dawson. Here. Rich John.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Present.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi.
Here.
Veronica Pillar. Lee Shirtliff.
Here.
Mike Sigler.
Here.
Shauna Black.
Here.
Travis Brooks.
Here.
Randy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Susan Curry.
Here.
Dan Klein.
Here. 13 members present. We have a quorum. We have two proclamations tonight. So let us start with Women's History Month proclamation. And reading that tonight is Legislator Susan Curry. All yours, Susan.
Thank you. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere of the life of the nation by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home. And whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of the nation by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force of the nation, and whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation, and whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement, and whereas American women have served our country courageously in the military, and whereas American women have been leaders, not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, the peace movement, and other movements which create a more fair and just society for all. And whereas, despite these contributions, the role of American women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of American history. And whereas a small list of notable women in Tompkins County history might include Juanita Breckinridge Bates, 19th and early 20th century suffragist; Constance E. Cook, New York Assemblywoman and promoter of equality and educational reform; Rochelle Siegel, feminist and author, mid-20th century; Corinne Brown Galvin, educator and historian of the local Black experience; Jocelyn Hart, ombudsman at Cornell University; Kathy Valentino, the late 20th century labor organizer and legislator; Allison Mason Kingsbury Bishop, 20th century artist; Clara Loring Bogart, late 19th century author of first novel, 1893, set in Tompkins County; Grace Miller White, early 20th century author of 9 books set in what she called the Storm Country; and Susan Graham Palmer, one of 4 local women who nursed during the Civil War and have memorial statues at TC3 entrance to Tompkins Cortland Community College. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Tompkins County Legislature does hereby proclaim the month of March 25th as Women's History Month in Tompkins County. Yay.
Thank you, Susan. We have a second proclamation tonight, Vietnam Veterans Day proclamation, I think it is. And Deborah Dawson is going to read it.
Yes, and I'm reading this in acknowledgement of my first husband, who was a Vietnam-era Marine veteran and thoroughly messed up by that experience, and in honor of the people I served with in the 402nd Civil Affairs Company in Tonawanda, New York, many of whom were Vietnam vets and sadly also pretty messed up. Whereas by presidential proclamations on May 25th, 2012, November 20th, 2017, and March 28th, 2022, The United States of America Vietnam War commemoration commenced and extends through Veterans Day 2025. And whereas the Vietnam War is one of our nation's longest military conflicts, stretching from 1955 with the arrival of U.S. military personnel to 1975, with the fall of Saigon and the evacuation of the last Americans from the U.S. Embassy there. And whereas the Department of Veterans Affairs estimates that today there are more than 7 million U.S. Vietnam veterans living in America and abroad, along with 10 million families of those who served during this time frame. And whereas included among the more than 58,000 fallen men and women whose names are etched on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C., are 4,126 names of New Yorkers. Of this number, Tompkins County lists 12 sons lost to war. And whereas the number of military service members lost to the effects of the Vietnam War continues to climb, as their mental health and the long-term effects of exposure to Agent Orange and other toxins wreak havoc on their personal health. And whereas, to help separate the warrior from the war and salute the service members who answered that call to service, this nation began a multi-year commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the war that ends in 2025. And whereas March 29th, 2025 is National Vietnam War Veterans Day, also known as Vietnam-Era Veterans Recognition Day, which seeks to honor the service and sacrifice of all military veterans, as well as their families, who served on active duty around the world between November 1st, 1955 to May 15th, 1975, highlight the service of our armed forces, and support organizations during the war, pay tribute to wartime contributions at home by American citizens, highlight the technology, science, and medical advances made during the war, and recognize the contributions by our allies. And whereas no distinction is observed between veterans who served in country, in theater, or who were stationed elsewhere during the Vietnam War period, as all were called to service and none could self-determine where they serve. And whereas residents throughout Tompkins County wish to join in honoring the service of those who donned the uniform and their families during that time, now therefore be it resolved that the Tompkins County Legislature does hereby proclaim March 29th, 2025 as Vietnam Veterans Day in Tompkins County. And Dan Klein will, of course, affix his hand and the seal of our county. Thank you. Come on up.
All yours.
Would you gentlemen like to introduce yourselves? Here, use the microphone, please.
My name is Wesley Pace, and I live in Danby, and I'm proud to be a member of this county.
And we're proud to have you.
My name's Terry Clark. I'm commander of VFW Post 961, right over here on Martin Luther King. Is it Boulevard or Drive? I can never remember.
Boulevard.
And I live out in Newfield for 47 years.
Michael Ryan, Chapter 377, Vietnam Veterans of America, Tompkins, Cortland County. We appreciate this, and I live in the town of Carroll.
We're all very grateful for your service. Thank you.
Thanks for picking JR. He can't be here tonight, and he has really put veterans back into the face of the community by his activities, so we appreciate that.
And I'd like to say thank you from Post 221 out here on 96B. And anybody who's a veteran, we'd love to see you Or if you're a son of a veteran, we'd love to have you.
All right, thank you. There will be 2 executive sessions tonight, and I will announce later on their purpose. I'm not aware of any reordering of business. Does anybody have anything they wanted to request? Then we are up to privilege of the floor. If there's anyone here today that would like to speak, please go to the back of the room, grab one of these blue forms, fill it out, bring it right on up, and we'll get you in the queue. If you are going to speak, you're agreeing to the following rules, which I will now read. I agree to a 3-minute time limit. I agree not to raise my voice. I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. I agree to be courteous and not make comments, gestures, outbursts, or other disruptions while other members of the public or legislators are speaking. I agree that if I cause a disruption and am asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. First person up is James Smith.
James Smith, paramedic from Ithaca. As you can see, I really want to go running, but it was more important to come here and thank you. There's finally been some movement with the city on the dispatch codes. By you providing the forum for me also to come and talk to, I think
Mr. Smith, could you move a little closer to the microphone, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is that better? So by you creating this forum, I created pressure, I think, on the city to take some action. Margaret Fabrizio had asked the city manager a year ago to get some information on the dispatch codes and the call volumes with the fire department. She did not get a response, so she's talked directly to the fire chief. He now is reviewing the dispatch codes. We'll see what his resources are, and we'll run them by his medical director, and that's great. It started a discussion. I really want to thank you. Mr. Kuhl, 2 meetings ago, seemed to think that I was in favor of you sending fly cars into the city, and that he supported that. It doesn't make any sense for me for the city to be paying a fire department $14 million a year not to respond to those calls and to ask you to come in for them. I'm in favor of mutual aid strongly when needed, but the city needs to get its own house in order first, please. I've had such a good response, I'm tempted to ask you to send budget people in on the fly cars. Maybe we could resolve our budgetary issues, like 4 years of missing audits, get our bond rating back, et cetera, and so forth, but thank you. And I missed the last meeting, but what a credit to you guys on a terrific discussion on a difficult public issue, mental health. I watched it, I was fascinated, I learned a lot of things from both sides and tied it into my own personal experiences. Thank you very much. You should be very proud of yourselves.
Next up is Zach Wynn.
Good evening. I'm curious if any update on the status of negotiations between TCAT and union is available. I rely on the TCAT to get to and from work, and the uncertainty surrounding the possibility of a strike is concerning. While I understand that the priorities of the union negotiators are about more than increased pay, with unreasonable amounts of mandatory overtime eroding their quality of life, I'm curious if the city and the county are in a position to pay increased wages for the TCAT staff. Is it even possible for TCAT to agree to the union's demands without a new source of funds? With Cornell unwilling to offer more funding to the system and the city and the county already stretched thin, it may be time to consider increasing the fare to $2.50 or $3 a ride. I would be willing to double my transportation expenses if it meant a more reliable TCAT with adequate staffing that could see the return of full service to West Hill, specifically the 9 and 10 p.m. Route 14 routes, and a return of hourly service on weekends. Ending service to West Hill after 8 p.m. disproportionately affects many low-income people who rely on public transportation, with the apartments from Chestnut and West Village to Lindeman Creek all the way up to Overlook by the hospital essentially cut off after 8, with East Hill, Cornell, and the rest of town seeing buses run as late as almost midnight. It should be possible to get to and from work at major employers like Ithaca College and Cornell from West Hill on the TCAT, something currently not possible if a job requires you to be present after 8 p.m. I believe this disparity in service is inequitable and would be a good area for the new diversity, equity, inclusion effort undertaken by the county to focus its attention on. I am also curious if the county intends to remain a living wage employer following the increase in the Tompkins County living wage calculation to $24.82 an hour. Additionally, I would like to thank Legislator Rich John for addressing my concerns at the Public Safety Committee regarding roadblocks, protests, and vandalism during the previous meeting of the Legislature. Quote, "We don't want to be blocking traffic," unquote, as stated by Rich, is the closest thing I have heard to a denouncement of the tactic by this body. Please consider explicitly stating what is not acceptable behavior at these protests. The color-coded guidelines produced by the city are a poor substitute for a clear request by the county to keep protests within a legal and ethical framework. Trapping people in their vehicles is wrong, dangerous, and has become normalized. Elected officials from both the city and the county have engaged in this conduct. As James Smith has pointed out, disruptions to traffic put the lives of people in ambulances or driving themselves to the hospital where seconds count in jeopardy. Terrorism is defined as the use of violence, intimidation, or threats to achieve political or ideological goals. Terrorism is what has been playing out in Ithaca for over a decade. It is now clear that the vandalism of the Tesla Chargers with swastikas late last month is part of a nationwide pattern of vandalism and arson targeting Tesla charging stations, dealerships, and vehicles. Recently, a website was created to dox Tesla owners individually, with one person targeted here in Ithaca. I have sent you documentation of this. May I finish briefly?
Yes, please.
This summer is shaping up to produce civil unrest unseen since 2020. The time to get a handle on the situation is now, and not once it spirals out of control. I know many of you have expressed concern about the direction of the new administration. The best thing you can do to fight back is to not allow it to become a justification for terrorizing innocent people. Thank you.
Are there any more members of the public who wanted to speak tonight? Okay, we are next up to municipal officials' privilege of the floor. We've got Pierre St. Perez, City of Ithaca Common Council. Welcome, Pierre.
As always, good to see you guys. Should be a reasonably brief update. After our long and storied discussion of city building fees, Council has introduced and implemented a new fee schedule. This only took several months. We will also be conducting a examination of our entire fee structure over the next couple of months in the hopes of making it more effective. Additionally, there's going to be discussion and public hearings over the next couple of weeks on various minor zoning changes, particularly in Collegetown, as well as on the issue of accessory dwelling units in the city of Ithaca. We will be beginning our budget discussions, hopefully next month. And as part of our joint commitment to reimagining public safety, I do want to note that the city is following through on plans that have been developing since the mid-2010s to acquire property for a new public safety facility that would be able to accommodate reimagining public safety goals. I think that's it for now.
Questions or comments for Pierre? Ann.
Thank you for the report, Pierre. Just wondering, you mentioned building fees. Is that for inspections or something else?
That is for inspections.
Okay, thank you.
The fees schedule had to be updated in order to accommodate new software.
Rich?
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know the city's been trying to catch up on its audits and getting its bond rating back in place. Any report in that direction?
Absolutely. So the current projection of the Controller's Office is that we should have our credit rating back before our next round of borrowing.
And when is that?
I can get back to you on that if you'd like.
Okay, don't.
Other questions or comments? Pierre, I was curious, you said you're starting your budget process next month. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the beginning of the city's budget process, assuming that it follows the same pattern as last year, involves council setting priorities for the city and establishing the process by which we want it to go and what we want to see for the next couple of months.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, as always.
Of course. Great to see you guys.
I don't think there are any other elected officials in the room. If not, then let's go to legislator privilege of the floor. Veronica.
Thank you. Two things. One, on Saturday, I went to the Justice for Robert Brooks event at Southside, and I just want to thank the organizers who put that on and the people who came to speak and present, including Robert Brooks's family. It was very powerful, especially the open mic for people with lived experience of incarceration or having family who is incarcerated. And his mother's speaking, I can't begin to describe just how incredible of a woman she must be. So thanks to Alliance of Families for Justice and others for that. And then on a much lighter note, this week, Newfield High School's drama group is presenting the Addams Family School Edition. It's in Newfield High School Auditorium at 7 p.m. this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and 1 p.m. this Sunday. Tickets are $5 or $10, depending on how old you are.
Randy.
Thank you, Dan. I'll continue on the Newfield thing. The Newfield Central School District has been working with Cornell School of Agricultural and Life Sciences, and they've been doing some surveying and analysis and community research. They've been working this for about a year, and now there's surveys out there. So there's a survey available out there right now by going to newfieldschools.org. And taking a survey. It's open till the 31st. And the goal for Cornell is they're trying to figure out how to work with all schools, not just Newfield, to prepare people when they come out of school that they can be employed. And that's their overall goal for that. The other thing I wanted to share, and I shared an email with some of the legislators, I've been getting a lot of calls and confrontations about electric bills. And I know this has happened before. And it just seems like it's arbitrary at times. It just, all of a sudden, people just get this bill. It's like 35% more than it was. And Terry Carroll did a very good job of going over the overview of all of that's happening. But I really feel that, NYSEG, and I know they were hacked about 3 years ago, and they cannot reconcile bills to the county beyond 3 years ago. This could provide us any of that data, which very confusing. Mm-hmm. If they can't provide it, then how do they know what they've done? I think there should be a forensic audit of NYSEG and their billing practices.
Ann.
Thank you. Following a little bit up on NYSEG issues, I believe there's still some folks out with the major power outages. I'm not sure. But there was, as most folks probably know, there was widespread outages. Our power was out for about 24 hours, and I apologize to my neighbors because it was our tree that took down the line for the street. But I wanted to thank the repair crews who were out all night long working. There were so many trees down on roads, properties, so they had to have crews out to do that. And then whole other crews out to repair the lines. So I wanted to thank those folks who were doing that and who are continuing to do that. And I believe it's Newfield Fire Department that NYSEG has put a deposit or pallets of water and dry ice. So if people are still out of power and they need to take advantage of that, I believe that's at Newfield Fire Department, right? Okay, and lastly, I just wanted to mention, following up on a play, in Trumansburg, the high school drama club presented Newsies, a Broadway musical, this past weekend. And I wasn't there, but I heard that there was a power outage during the performance. Oh, no. And the students literally did not miss a beat. Kept going, ad-libbed, incorporated the outage and the lack of lights and electronics into their performance. And so shout out to those young folks who persevered. I think that's probably a great lesson in getting through no matter what life throws at you. So thank you.
Greg.
Well, as they say, Ann, the show must go on. Just two things, mostly a reminder just for my colleagues here at the legislature. Just wanted to point out that Cornell University's Office of Community Relations has their 2025 Town Gown Conference, and the topic is housing, meeting our community needs. That's Wednesday, April 9th. If you saw the invitation in your inbox and you're interested in going, please attend. Sign-ups are by Monday, March 24th, because the participation is capped at a specific number of people. The topics will include local, state, and federal policy landscape, crisis in our community, solutions and resources to address homelessness, supportive and affordable housing needs, and housing innovation, program and solutions to expand middle-income housing. I think the last one, obviously all of these are important, but there's a big piece called the missing middle that people very focused on the housing issue are trying to figure out how to solve, but most importantly, figuring out how to fund. Because there's not a lot of funding for that missing middle, and that's why it's called missing. I unfortunately can't attend due to a previous personal conflict, which if I could rearrange, I totally would, but I would encourage you all to be there. The other thing I wanted to remind you on the topic of housing for legislators is the Ithaca Board of Realtors on April 11th at the Moakley House at 11:30. Is the legislative luncheon that they host. I know at least 3 of you are signed up already, or 4. Maybe there is a late addition, but appreciate that. That's always a good time. It's great information to understand our local housing market and hear and be able to network with a number of people across the sector. So just wanted to point those 2 opportunities out in case they got missed somewhere in the inbox.
Mike Lane.
3 things. One is that today is election day in all but one of our villages, and the polls are open till 9, and I hope folks get out and vote. Villages aren't getting a lot of publicity in their races, but it's no less important. They have taxing authority just like all local governments do, and it's important that you support your local governments, those people who live in villages, by going out and voting. Second, I wanted to mention something happened pretty nice in Dryden. The Dryden boys basketball team made a little bit of local history by winning, first time ever for Dryden, a sectional championship down in Binghamton for the Section 4 Class B title. And the community was very, very proud of that because they've never been able to get to that point before. And I learned afterwards, which made it even nicer, when the bus was coming back, bringing the victorious team back into Dryden, they were met by first responders from all over the town, lights and sirens, and brought them back to the high school to celebrate their pretty nice victory that night. It was written up in the Cortland Standard. Sadly, the Cortland Standard is no more, having filed for bankruptcy on Tuesday. The last thing I'd want to talk about is...
Your mic. Can you use your mic, Mike?
Oh, sorry. Last thing I just wanted to mention a little bit about the Looney Tunes going on down in Washington. Where do you start with that? I thought maybe I'd talk a little bit about our good neighbor to the north, the Canadians. Why on earth would we want to pick a fight with the Canadians? I mean, it just makes no sense. We have, since the War of 1812, where maybe we thought we could take over Canada, and they thought they could take over New York. Remember at that time, Canada was filled with a lot of the pro-royalist people from the United States that had moved up there after the Revolution. Well, I guess maybe somebody wants to have their picture on the coin, I don't know, up there, instead of the king. We hear that it ought to be the 51st state. Well, why not have it be 10 states? There are 10 provinces. Could it be because we wouldn't want to have 20 new senators in the United States Senate under our Constitution, if that were to happen? And the population of these provinces in Canada are, for the most part, larger than certainly our 4 smallest states population, like Wyoming and Vermont and Alaska and North Dakota. When the first laws that talked about states forming were in 1787 with the Northeast Ordinance, and said you had to have 60,000 people in order to form a state. And a lot of states were formed using that direction. One thing it said, it's the people in the territory that was trying to become a state had to adopt a constitution that had to be a Republican form of government. So does that mean that because Canada has a parliamentary form of government, that they'd have to have a new constitution and set up a republic form of government? And what about the people in Quebec who have never felt really comfortable being even part of the Canadian Union, and Canada had to go so far as to become bilingual in order to make the folks, French-speaking folks, feel more comfortable, naturally, and to help the English-speaking people feel more open to the French-speaking people. Well, we just decided, according to our president, that English is the official language. I'm sure that would be real popular in Quebec. And if Canada's going to be the 51st state, what about Mexico? Is that going to be the 52nd state? Or
no,
because they speak Spanish, does that mean we can't have them as part of our nation too? I know we've toyed with Puerto Rico for many, many years about that. Well, I'll stop now. But it's the kind of things that are happening, the bullying, the terrorizing federal employees, universities, libraries, museums, people who need health care. It's just not right what's going on right now, and I'm sorry, but I simply had to make some comment tonight. Thank you.
Mike Sigler.
Well, I won't be quite as dour as this. I was stopped in a parking lot, in the Walmart parking lot the other day, by a missionary, and they asked me what brings me joy, what brought me joy that day, and I said, well, this week what brought me joy was winter aconite came up. Winter aconite's a little yellow flower, comes up, and it's the first flower that comes up. And it pokes its head through the snow. And that's how you know that spring is here. And the second thing that told me spring was here was Hazel was out with her little mower today with blowing bubbles everywhere, which was just adorable, if you can imagine that. So some other things, though, I think it's been a pretty good day. While we sat here, a ceasefire has been called in Ukraine. Will it last? I have no idea. It's only for 30 days, and it's only a partial ceasefire. But if you can stop something that's grinding up hundreds of thousands of people, and I don't know what the terms will look like. I don't know any of that. But I know that for right now, maybe there'll be a little less shooting in that section of the world. And number two, after 9 months, our astronauts have returned to Earth. And they just splashed down at 58 minutes past 5, and they are going to be unloaded right now, which is I find always to be amazing, that people can go and do that and, break the bounds of Earth, as you would say, and then return safely. And here they are to return to their families after 9 months. So I want to congratulate all the people involved with that, NASA, SpaceX, everyone who has brought these astronauts home, and it's just miraculous. So that's it. So I think it's a pretty good day. Thanks.
Lee.
I want to thank you, Dan, for the proclamations that were read tonight by Susan and Deborah, and several of the notable women that Susan mentioned are people that I've known and learned from, and it was good to see the local names. And in particular, with Deborah's resolution, I did want to make mention that there will be a Vietnam Veterans Memorial Day and a ceremony at 11 o'clock Saturday the 29th in Groton at the Terrence Graves Memorial. And Terrence Graves was one of the 12 that Deborah cited that we lost among our county residents, and was posthumously awarded a Medal of Honor. And it'll be a time of reflection followed by an open house at the American Legion Post 800. So just wanted to put that out there as well, and certainly all are welcome to attend.
Thank you. Amanda.
Well, Saturday was a really great day for Cornell women's ice hockey. Incredible game against Minnesota Duluth. Largest crowd in women's hockey here, history, 3,100 people. It was packed. Incredible game. Just these young women playing their hearts out, really intense, no score for 2 periods, and the Cornell finally got a goal in the third period. The crowd went wild. It was like a rock concert. I mean, it was amazing. And then really hard fought till the very last seconds, and Cornell won. And this was the regional finals for the NCAA competition. So they are on their way to Minnesota this weekend, in the next day or two here. And they will be playing in the semifinals. I don't remember who won, but the winner of that game will go on to the finals. So I believe it's Friday night, and then the final game will be on Saturday. But just, kudos to these young women who put their all, they're in college, but they're putting their all into this game and this sport, and they're inspiring so many other girls and women around the world. So if you have a chance to watch, I think it's going to be on ESPN. Check it out. They're really amazing.
Any other legislative privilege of the floor? Rich.
I wanted to respond to my colleague Mike Lane. His comments reminded me of, this is from the original New York Constitution from April 20th, 1777. And the direction to the counties was to institute and establish such a government as they shall deem best calculated to secure the rights, liberties, and happiness of the good people of this colony, and to continue in force until a future peace with Great Britain shall render the same unnecessary. So maybe we have options.
Anne.
Thank you, Dan. I forgot to ask this earlier, but I'm wondering is a request to reorder something would be the two resolutions under peak, as we have some staff and a member of the community organization here. So wondering if we could move that up a little bit.
D&E, is that correct?
Right.
Got it.
Thank you.
There's no objections. Okay. Any other legislative privilege of the floor? I would like to just say briefly, so this county belongs to NYSAC, the New York State Association of Counties. I've talked about them before. And I think every other month they put out a magazine, and here's the current version, edition. And in this, on page 50, is an article by Corsa Comfy, Fostering Diversity in County Government. So congratulations on getting published. Speaking of getting published, we also, I don't know if everyone knows this, we have two authors in our midst here on the legislature. One is Susan Curry, who has a book published several years ago, which I've read, called The Preventorium, a memoir, and it is available in our public library the last time I looked. That's where I got it from. And then we have a brand new book by an author in our midst. This is by Amanda Champion, who is writing under the name Amanda DeJaros. It is called In My Boots, a memoir of 5 million steps along the Appalachian Trail. It just came out a few weeks ago. Yeah. And it is available in the local bookstore. It is available national, online, and also from the author. So I just thought it would be good to acknowledge all these published authors in our midst. That is my report.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a special topical presentation by Danielle Szabo. Szabo, I think. Szabo, I rehearsed it, but I messed up. Thank you. Who's joining us online. Danielle is the Director of Workforce Innovation, Ithaca Area Economic Development. The presentation is called Tompkins Build, Pathways to Apprenticeship, Construction, Apprenticeship Readiness Program. Danielle, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much, and I'm really bummed that I'm not there in person tonight, but I'm really, really excited to give this update. Thank you for the introduction as well. This is Ithaca Area's Economic Development's second industry partnership. Our first one, if those have heard of it, is Direct to Work Pathways to Manufacturing, and this is an initiative that I have been working with the Tompkins Cortland Building Trades Council with for over the last year and a half to build pathways into apprenticeships, which means this is a readiness program to prepare people for what is a union and what does it mean to commit to a multi-year apprenticeship while also doing industry exposure with all of the trades that are actually within our local building trades council. So I'm really excited to say that we're actually launching this at the end of this month, and we are going to be running 2 cohorts this year. Over the last month, I have been conducting community partner meetings and info sessions to really get the word out there about what this opportunity is. The initiative here itself is fairly new, but this has actually been around for 20 years. It started out in San Francisco, and the original initiative was called City Build. And across the country, there's 209 Pathways to Apprenticeship programs. And these Pathway Apprenticeship programs have actually worked with the national chapter, the North American Building Trades Union. And really what this is that the unions have started to take ownership, that they've done a really bad job diversifying the industry. So these are pathways for women and people of color and veterans to really kind of explore what construction has to offer and how it can be a viable career pathway. So I'm going to show a quick video. It's a 4-minute video. And this video, I think, does a really good job capturing what these Pathways to Apprenticeship programs are. And as you'll see, we actually have almost a dozen of them already in New York State. And the building trades councils across the state are really starting to invest in these types of programs because we have so much economic activity that's going on across the state. From the Buffalo Bills Stadium to Micron coming and starting construction this year. We also have our Southwards project here in Ithaca that also anticipates thousands of construction jobs in Binghamton Boston, as well as some expansions in Albany. So this video actually highlights the apprenticeship readiness programs here in New York State. So you'll see some people talk from the Syracuse build and the Hudson Valley and the Albany build. And after this year, we'll be part of this video as well. So I'm going to play this video, and you'll notice that this is not a traditional classroom. It is actually a lot of hands-on.
I seen that I wasn't getting anywhere. I didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't know that there were other things that can help you get ahead in life. Being in the pre-apprenticeship program was the best decision I ever made. Every day I'm learning something new. It's just a blessing, and it's fun.
The apprenticeship program is set up for anybody. It's a big benefit for people of color, low income, women, people that are serious about wanting a career.
Apprenticeship programs in the construction industry create a pathway for individuals to get into the middle class. And we intend to demonstrate this year after year, grow our diversity, create more opportunity for people to have family-sustaining careers.
One of the best parts of the program is you don't need experience. You could come in with no idea what you want to do or what trade you want to go with. But once you get in, they'll give those different options to make a better decision of where you want to go.
Before I got into the pre-apprentice program, I knew little to nothing. From the first week, I was excited for the future, and I knew that I wanted to get through this program and go out to work. I was a little nervous to be a woman when I first walked in. There was 2 other women on the job with me, and the men honestly make me feel very welcomed, and I feel like one of them. I've gotten stronger even from 3 months ago. I'm amazed at what my body can do. I can do everything a guy can do.
This is our outreach, our workforce development effort to make sure that those folks, specifically women, people of color, who've never been exposed to building construction trades as a career, as an opportunity, now know that it's available. What's makes this training particularly strong is that it is a well-vetted, comprehensive curriculum. It's been approved and certified by NAT2, North American Building Trades Unions, and we call it the MC3 curriculum, the multi-craft core curriculum. And so within that 120 hours of curriculum, there are things such as construction awareness, tools and materials, financial literacy. You have all the skill sets that are necessary to be successful in going from a pre-apprentice to becoming an apprentice.
When I got into the pre-apprentice program, I was real surprised by how down-to-earth the teachers were. I'd say it's way different than a regular like high school or college. They've been in the field before, and some of them are still in the field every once in a while. They're regular people just like you.
I get to change a group of people's lives. I get to take them from something that they weren't happy with and see what else is out there. The sky's the limit in the next 10 years in construction.
I got serious about being an electrician. I like to work with my hands. It wasn't just a job. It was more of a career. My life has changed. I'm more financially stable. I'm able to put a kid through college, take care of my family, buy a house, new car. I would probably still be on the outside looking in. If it wasn't for the pre-apprenticeship program, I had no clue where to start and what direction to take.
If you've got that desire, and really 90%, especially with pre-apprentices and apprentices, it's just showing up. If you show up every day and have a good attitude, we can teach you the rest.
I feel very excited and happy about my future because I know from here, the only way to go is up. I'm just prospering each and every day. It's definitely a blessing.
The end of an apprenticeship program, when an individual becomes a journey person, the sense of knowledge, the sense of pride, the quality of the work and skill that they possess, second to none in any other industry.
Joining the pre-apprenticeship program actually gave me hope and opportunities.
I'm in the operating beautiful, and I love it.
If I could do it, you could do it too.
Everything is possible as long as you put your mind to it.
So as you could see, sorry, the video stopped, that we already have a dozen of these apprenticeship readiness programs across the state. So we are piloting ours at the end of this month, and 10 out of the 13 trades of our local building trades council has signed on to participate. So what does that mean? That means that we're actually going to be going to all 10 of their union halls. We're going to be doing hands-on in each of those training centers. We actually have active union members teaching the MC3 curriculum to individuals, and we're teaching it out of a union hall. We want to fully immerse people into this union experience before they make the decision of which union they want to apply to. So the 10 unions that we're working with are the plumbers and pipe fitters, the electricians, the bricklayers, the sheet metal workers, the allied trades who are the painters and glazers, iron workers, laborers, the carpenters, the heat frost insulators, and the operating engineers. So this is an hourly paid training, $15.50 an hour. And as Cricket talked about in that video, they're going to get a few certifications. Their OSHA 10 certification and their first aid and CPR certification. These are pretty universal regardless of the union that they're going to apply to. And then on top of it, the nationally recognized multi-craft core curriculum certification, which is the apprenticeship readiness. The enhanced trade content, the hands-on, and the union, the visiting of the union trade centers, all of these unions are creating supplemental content for when we are actually at their sites. So when we go down to the bricklayers, everyone's going to learn how to mix cement. They're actually going to practice bricklaying, and they're also going to do tiling. The electricians are coming up with stuff for them to learn how to bend piping. So we're really, really excited about this. On top of that, individuals during the program are going to have their own program project where they're going to build a wall, they're going to install electricity, install plumbing, they're also going to learn framing, and they're also going to be doing tiling as well of that. During the program, we're going to do a lot of math remediation because it's one of those skills that you need regardless of which union you go into. And then we're going to do practice around the entrance exam and interview prep. The unions do what they call a panel interview, which means more than one person is going to be interviewing them. So we want to make sure people feel pretty confident before they go into their interview. The MC3 curriculum is 120 hours, but we actually beefed it up with another 100 hours of communication skills, just like we did with direct to work. So in total, this program's 220 hours. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but these are the 9 modules of the national curriculum, the MC3 curriculum. And like I said, it's not your traditional classroom. The module 3, the construction health and safety, that's our actual OSHA 10 certification and CPR and first aid certification. The tools and material module, this is where everyone's going to get their student toolkit. Everyone's going to get a hard hat, a safety vest, steel-toed boots, a tool belt with 20 hand tools that they get to keep during the program. And this is where we're going to introduce our program project. So as I mentioned, we're going to be running this out of the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Training Center. It's going to start March 31st and it'll go through June 12th. It's an evening class, Monday through Thursday from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. Who are we looking for? We are looking for anyone that's 18 and older. The high school diploma and GED is preferred. 50% of the unions we're working with have waived this requirement. And you do not need to be a Tompkins resident to do this. You have to be one of the residents, you have to be a county resident for one of the unions that they serve. So pretty much anywhere in the southern tier, if you're a resident, you can apply to this program. One of the things that we're emphasizing is that you really need reliable transportation and the willingness to travel. These unions have a really large geographical touch point, so individuals that go into this really need to understand what that means to commit to that multi-year apprenticeship and being able to go and work for contractors regardless of what county they're in. So visually, this is the pathway, our inclusive pathways. We have the same way for direct to work. We are holding info sessions in our assessments this week. Depending on how people do through that process, there's 3 pathways. One is you might not be ready just yet, so we put you on a remediation plan and then put you back out into the community to work with one of our partners to remediate a academic or non-academic barrier. Second pathway is that we enroll you into the paid training, the Pathways to Apprenticeship program, that 11-week paid training. Or if you already have experience but you've struggled with the entrance exam or interview prep, we can do a direct referral to one of the unions. So, why should you do this? We're paying you to explore whether or not construction is a potential career pathway for you. You also get transferable certifications as like OSHA 10 and CPR. And you also get a toolkit that you get to keep upon graduation that you can use as you transition into your union of choice. So we have a landing page now. Tompkins Build is right on the Ithaca Area Economic Development website. We will be taking applications until this Friday. We have had an incredible response already. We've had about 120 people go through our info sessions or sign up. And as of today, we've conducted over 40 interviews. Tomorrow we have 21 set up, and I don't know what else is to come over the week, but that's been an incredible response so far. And that's what I have.
Thank you. Do we have questions or comments for Danielle? Shauna.
Thank you. I was wondering how many residents from Tompkins County are enrolled in the upcoming program?
So we have not made our final selection in the program yet, but I will say that we are getting a lot of applicants from Tompkins County. We're getting them from Tioga, Chemung, Cayuga. They are coming from all over, but we have not made a final selection yet.
Okay, and just to clarify, there was a contribution from this legislature to support your program, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I would be curious, once you have the numbers, how many people from Tompkins are going to be enrolled in the programming?
I can do that for you.
Thank you.
Mike Sigler.
I was just wondering, so this is just for this year. Are you thinking that this will continue on after this year, or like as an every year kind of thing, or are you going to do it more than once a year?
So we actually are scheduled to do 2 cohorts this year, spring and the fall.
Nice.
We have enough funding through our federal grant to do that. I've actually also applied for a state grant through the Office of Strategic and Workforce Development. We've actually been invited to stage 2 to further that application. And if we do get awarded that funding, that would allow us to do 2 additional cohorts in 2026, as well as also for us to launch our 3rd initiative called Southern Tier Connect, which is our transportation supportive service initiative, which allows us to pay for people to do driver's license restoration, pay for fines on their DMV record, car repairs, and also help with funding for the car buyer program. In our federal grant, we had secured funding to build the framework of that, but the state funding would allow us to actually use the flexible dollars to provide the direct services to the client. So overall, we should have enough funding for 4 cohorts, but it will be my job to continue to secure funding to keep running more cohorts. I don't want this to go away.
Randy.
Yes, hello, Danielle. Thank you for the presentation, and looks pretty exciting, and wish you a lot of luck with it. One of the things you mentioned is you're requiring or telling them they really need transportation. And we've heard from other presentations that transportation is the biggest barrier for people to get employed. So is there any assistance to help people with transportation, or is that something that's not on the radar?
No, that's why we're building out Southern Tier Connect. That's our transportation supportive service initiative. For this cohort, we are going to be able to support people with gas cards for the commuting to all the training centers during the program. But those that need real transportation support around kind of the driver's license restoration or cleaning up the fines or car repairs, if we get funded in June, then anyone that is doing Tompkins Build or director work would have access to that supportive service. We know transportation is a massive barrier, so when we were building out this initiative, we wanted to proactively create a transportation initiative that would align to it.
Thank you.
Ann.
Thank you, Danny, for the presentation. Always good to see what you're up to. Great initiative. And so a couple of comments. I'm glad to see that you're able to get funding to help to pay folks, pay for their tools, but to pay them per hour. You know, that really, I'm sure, is a big incentive. And because it's probably takes, what, about 11 weeks, the program in the evening? Right, so that's a lot of time. So thank you for securing that. And just want to say, as you know, but just say to the public that was something that I heard from the unions, you know, for years, is that they need more people coming in. These are really good jobs, great benefits, most folks can live here in the county if they so choose, because they pay so well. And as the one person said in there, that they could afford a house and help put their child through college. And especially with the Industrial Development Agency now requiring 75% local labor, this helps to fill that, to provide a pipeline for those folks to work here locally. So thank you very much for doing this. And I didn't catch it, but how many people are in each cohort when you get it finalized?
So this cohort, we're going to be taking 15, and that's for safety reasons. Our student to teacher ratio, like I said, we are doing a lot of hands-on with power tools, and one of the things we needed to do was secure, all of the proper insurances. So we have a 4-core team of instructors. 1 is from IBEW and 3 are from the plumbers and pipe fitters. So in terms of student to teacher ratio, we felt comfortable with 15.
Great, thank you.
Greg.
Yeah, I want to thank Legislator John for suggesting that this come forward. I think some of us maybe have a little bit more exposure than others, Danny, to the work that you're doing, but often, maybe forget to share it, widely like you did tonight. I also just want to commend you. Danny, you've been with IAED for what, 3 years almost? Just about?
Almost. Yeah.
Danny's really a department of like 1 plus or minus, depending on, some transition in workforce and things. And to be able to have what we've accomplished, or you've accomplished, we within our community, really should not go without mention, because we're incredibly blessed and lucky to have somebody like Danny in this role, and to be able to put together thoughtful, comprehensive programs that actually get people to work. And are actually putting, jobs and careers, in grasp of folks that may not otherwise be exposed to those trainings. Danny's also the type of person that will learn the skill that she's asking her students and participants to go through. And that's, I think, really to be commended, is trying to understand what is the training we're asking and going through it herself. So, Danny, I just wanted to give you a public shout out, because we are incredibly grateful for, I think, the work that you do. This is not an easy job to pull all these things together, and to be, one person with some support over the last 3 years. It's incredibly impressive. So thank you again. Keep it up, and keep evangelizing the good work that you're doing, because we need it, and we need to be more supportive of it. And any way we can help, please let us know.
Thank you for all the kind words.
Rich.
Yeah, my colleagues have pretty much said everything I was going to say, so I won't go on at any length. But Danielle, thank you. When I saw this presentation, I was so excited. I asked Dan if he could get a little time to talk to us about it, because it's something that I think needs some real public attention. This is really good news, and I want to, just say thank you for the work. I'm very curious to see how it all goes after the first cohort and how it will grow from there.
Thank you. I will say that the state has all eyes on us, and they're very excited. The State Building Trades Council. We will be holding a pretty large graduation for this program, so I will make sure everyone on the county ledge will be invited to this opportunity. I'm very excited to kick this off this year.
Okay, thank you again, Danielle. We're moving on. We're up to reports. First one is from the County Administrator, Corsa Akumfi. You're on.
Okay. I can't even see. So, very quick items. As I indicated at the last meeting, the position for the whole health commissioner and DSS have been posted. I will be reaching out to get the panels set up for the interview process. So watch out for the contact from me indicating getting your interest in serving on any of those 2 panels through the committee itself as well. Thursday, we'll have the Legislature County Department's dialogue session at the whole health building. We have everything all set up. I think various conversation has gone on as to how the program will be. It basically is an opportunity to engage with the department heads and also discuss the budget planning processes as we get into the budget season. Tomorrow, Office of Temporal Disability Assistant, OTDA, will be visiting HHS committee. They will be having just a conversation with us in terms of some of the questions that we have, or the work that they do, and also understanding our housing needs within the county. What they have made me aware is that they will revisit the county in April to provide a holistic presentation as to the information they gather from this specific visit tomorrow. So if any one of you is interested in being part of the conversation tomorrow at HHS committee meeting at 1 p.m., you're invited to attend. Also, we had a meeting this morning with RSS. I believe is they're building new housing. That's the new housing at the Meadows. I'm meeting up with them towards the end of next week to basically bring key people involved in housing together. There's a lot of agencies working on housing in silos and trying to coordinate and bring people together and see how we can resolve the long-term housing issues that we are facing in the county. Also, we did gather the data from the department as to the impact of the federal funding. At the moment, there's no direct immediate impact on our funding resources. We've provided you with all the information we pulled together, but we are still monitoring to see the long-term impact on any funding program that we have at the moment, but we are not seeing any immediate impact yet based on what is happening at Washington. So we're keeping our eye on it as well. The last item I have on my list, GEAR, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, visited the county yesterday. Basically, it's part of their process for the conference to be held between October 19th and the 22nd in the county. They indicated to us that they usually bring in over 100 people to these conferences, so it's a significant opportunity for the county, and we are now going through the program development, how the county can really demonstrate our ability to host some of these conferences, and that can also put us on the map in terms of our ability to organize an event of that magnitude. So we're excited that they chose Ithaca, and they're bringing all the people here to experience what we have here in the county. And so, yeah, that's our report for now.
Questions or comments for Corsa? Deborah?
Yeah, thank you, Corsa. It's good to know that so far we're not feeling any impact on our federal funding, but I would like to know if we've quantified how much funding we get from the federal government and how much we depend on it.
Yes, so basically the data we collected from the department, as I distributed to all of you through your mailbox, I believe, shows the amount, the specific grant program, how much funding is involved in that specific program, and how much reimbursement we have received so far and what is pending. And the question that we're trying to establish from the department is, if they are experiencing any delay or communication from the agency of either cancellation or pause, and that is not the case yet. But it spans various programs that we run, and also we are continuing to examine the impact as a whole. But at this point, it's the individual programs that we selected. So I don't know if you have access to the record. If not, I will email it to all of you. We just got the data together this afternoon towards this meeting, and I will send the broader numbers to all of you.
I appreciate that, because I cannot find an email that gives me that information.
Okay, I will send it over to you.
Thank you.
Can you send it to all of us?
Yes, yes.
Other questions or comments for Corsa? Corsa, I wanted to clarify and reinforce something you said. I'm not sure everyone knows quite what is actually going to happen at this event. On this Thursday at 2 o'clock at the Health Department, it's a budget training And then it's sort of a second round to it, which is a more open-ended dialogue between legislators and department heads. Is that accurate?
Yes. So we have invited a consultant from State Controller's Office. So the first part of the dialogue session will be a presentation from them, some degree of question and answer session on the budget processes. And then after that part, the first part, then we will have a department head and county legislator dialogue session. And that can be about any other topic, not just restricted to budget process.
Thank you. Any last questions for our county administrator? Okay, thank you. Next up, County Attorney Maury Josephson.
Good evening. Just a short report this evening. Our office continues supporting all of the initiatives that Corsa just described and more. Our recruitment for a additional paralegal for our office is proceeding smoothly, and we hope to be getting into interviews very soon. That is my report for this evening, unless you have any specific questions for me.
Questions or comments from Maury? Okay, thank you. Next up, Lori Scarrett, Director of Finance.
Thank you. A few things tonight. The first being update on the in-rem foreclosure process. We are currently, last time I reported to you, we were at 58 properties, and as of today, we're at 42. That's 21 residential and 21 vacant commercial. The next thing I wanted to let you know is this week I've been working or assisting the city of Ithaca in their search for controller. So that's progressing. And the staff and I are very busy. We're in the thick of year end, closing up 2024, gathering the reports and getting ready for the auditors to come next month. And we are in the process of filling 3 vacant positions. So that's it.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Lori? All right, thank you. Are there any resolutions to be added to or withdrawn from the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. First, we have the advisory appointments. To the Environmental Management Council, Melissa Millspaw, Town of Enfield representative. From the Public Safety Committee to the Advisory Board on Indigent Representation, Rich John, legislator. From the Housing and Economic Development Committee to the Strategic Tourism Planning Board, Amanda Bisson, Tompkins Cortland Community College representative. And from the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee to the Water Resources Council, Graham Savio. I want to mention that that appointment was mistakenly announced at the committee as a Environmental Management Council appointment, but it is a Water Resources Council appointment. And then for resolutions, we have Resolution A, budget adjustment. Tompkins County.
I'd like to remove A.
A is pulled. Resolution B, award of 2025 Arts and Cultural Organization Development, ACOD grants, ID number 13151. Would somebody move the consent agenda? Greg moves, Deborah seconds. So, we're all here, so all in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. All right, we're going to go to the resolutions D and E under the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. Ann Corman, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. So Resolution D is on packet page 29, and this one is making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to the next resolution, appropriating funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the Finger Lake Land Trust Guy and Sutcliffe Conservation Easement Project. And there's also a memo attached to that.
Is there a second? Veronica seconds.
And so this is the just determining the environmental significance This is not appropriating the monies that will be in the next resolution. And if there is any detailed questions, we have Abigail Connor from our planning department. We also have Andy Zepp here, the president of the Finger Lakes Land Trust. Folks, any questions for them?
Thank you. Discussion. Ready for a vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you.
And then the next one is appropriating the funds. And this is packet page 36, Resolution E, appropriating funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the Finger Lakes Land Trust Guy and Sutcliffe Conservation Easement Project. Easy for me to say. And there's also some supporting documentation in there, and I'll just see if there's any questions.
Is there a second? Travis seconds. Any discussion? Shauna?
Annie, this is in your district? Is that right?
Correct.
Have you received any feedback? Positive or negative?
I haven't, but I'll see if,
Okay.
if Andy or Abigail have.
Andy, and Abigail, if you would come up and anywhere there's a microphone, in a seat or in these stands here.
We've talked to a number of neighbors in the area, and again, this is not providing public access. It's codifying land use and protecting about 3,300 feet of the creek. So it's been very well received. It's been communicated to us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Greg?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain my no vote in committee, and I'll support this moving forward. I think the work that the Finger Lakes Land Trust does is great work, and appreciate the work that, so please don't take my no vote in committee as anything, but I do think that it's important that we have these discussions as a full legislature, and that they don't sort of get passed through on the consent agenda. One of the things I also think is important to point out in this process is understanding what would alternative uses be to conservation. And I think we need to have that conversation holistically. I'm all for supporting the conservation, but I think we need to have a little bit more of a balanced dialogue when looking at these specific grant applications. And I don't necessarily know what that means, but it's just something I feel strongly about, and we've had sort of a conversation about over the last couple of times. I'll go ahead and support this today, but just think it's important that, you know, we understand that there are things that we need to conserve, but we also need to improve certain lands for certain functions, and I think that needs to be part of the conversation as well. So that's where I'm at on this one, but appreciate the work that went into this from both our staff and the Finger Lakes Land Trust and the folks who own this property as well.
Ann?
Yeah, I just want to add a little more detail too, that this is the request is for $41,705. And other requests we've had come through recently were for purchase of land, and this is for conservation easement. And so the lands are being donated. Well, it's a conservation easement on the property. And so this will help with legal fees and documentation, surveys, things like that.
Rich?
Yeah, I'll be supporting the resolution. This will help protect some of the upstream before Teganic Park, and it's just a really good thing to do, in my mind.
Any other discussion? Ready for a vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we're going back to the, well, Ann, do you want to say anything more about your committee while we're on you, and we'll finish your committee?
Sure.
Sure.
Thank you. So we met on Monday, March 10th, and a couple other things on our agenda. We had a report from the Recycling Materials Management Department regarding their customer service survey that they had, and that's something that's worth taking a look at. They had 92% rated satisfied or very satisfied, And so in their report, they also talk about some of the things that they have done and that they are doing to improve services for folks that they interact with in the community. And we had Terry Carroll from our planning department introduce us to the concept of the Coalition for Green Capital Municipal Investment Fund Opportunity. And in essence, if I have this correct, it's a pipeline of funding that's being developed for helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it's just the beginning of that. So we'll hear more about that, hopefully. And lastly, we had a presentation from Irene Weiser from the Case Board, and that was regarding the NYSEG grid resilience and long-term gas planning, and also talked about the rate case. And it might seem a little dense, but I think Irene did a really good job of presenting, and I think it was probably like 10, 15 minutes, the presentation and a little discussion. So it's worth looking at, especially when we, as was said, we get a lot of calls, and this affects a lot of folks. So for instance, the Case Board and our planning department really did a lot of work interjecting and commenting on the rate case, that the last NYSEG rate case, and there's plans to do that again. So I really wanted to thank the Case Board, but also if you could to look at that to see what difference that it does make for a great advisory board like that, and including the work of the planning department. And I think that's about it.
Questions or comments for Ann? Okay, thank you. Let's go to the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Mike Lane, Chair.
Thank you. Budget, Capital, and Personnel met on March 13th, and we had some interesting discussions. We had a full report from Norma Jane about the American Rescue Plan, and that is available if anybody hasn't seen that. As you recall, those ARPA funds were used for capital projects, for government services, and for nonprofit donations. And all that is laid out, a pretty extensive report, and I commend it to, I commend the people who wrote it, and I commend it to you to take a look at. You can watch it on our replay on at the presentation at our Budget and Capital meeting, or I can suppose we have copies available in hard copy for you to look at. Lori Scarrett brought to us a discussion about the way we handle in-rem foreclosure proceedings. That's when we foreclose on properties that owe us back taxes. We don't have a whole lot of them the last few years, but the question has been whether to continue to have an in-person auction when it gets to that point, or to whether to do a virtual auction online. And there are pros and cons to that. We apparently get a lot of people that come to them. There's issues of having to handle cash. There's overtime for employees, and other things that certainly Lori can speak to more than I. But I think the committee said, all right, let's give it a try to do it virtually this year, if that's what Lori wants to recommend, and then let's see how it goes, and we'll come back and decide whether to do it again in the future. Ruby Pulliam and Larry Workman reported to us that they have begun the process for the searches for the Director of Finance position, the Director of Whole Health, and the Commissioner of Social Services. Seems like lately we've had a lot of very important leaders in our county retire, and it's important that we get new folks that are going to be able to take up the reins. Those are some of the highlights. Deb, is there anything you'd like to mention?
I think you covered it, Mike.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks. And I do have a resolution, and I'm going to move the revised version, which was in your red packet. There were a couple of minor changes because of the addition, I understand. So those corrections are made in yellow in the one in your packet, and that's the one I'm going to move. Budget adjustment, negotiated salary adjustments. And these are for because of our union contracts. And I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second for Resolution C? Veronica seconds. Discussion. Ann?
Yes, I'm just wondering, I know it's on the fly, but is there a tally of the total, or is that bottom one? Yeah, is that last number a total?
I remember that question came up, but whether that was been calculated since then or not, maybe Norma Jane can tell us.
So there were a lot of adjustments. We increased and decreased across all the departments depending on if there was a surplus. And so the bottom line where it says regular pay, that's the total amount that's being moved from the allocation, pending allocation from our A fund.
So only 100.
Yeah, because there were many adjustments across the departments that due to vacancies.
Okay, thank you.
Dan?
That's right. I'll get it. Randy?
So this basically balances 2024, is that what this process is? Great, thank you.
Yes.
Rich?
And just to be clear, so there were salary changes that affected fringe, but there was also accounting for vacancies. So that's why you're getting some going down and some going up.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to ask, it's a negative number. Does that mean
The credit.
it's a credit?
Oh, it's a credit.
Yes.
So we spent $102,000 less than we budgeted.
That's correct.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? Resolution C.
Just want to note, that's some good budget in, numbers, and we might not be hearing a lot of that going forward. Just want to remember that.
100,000 is coming. Okay, ready for a vote then? Resolution C. All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
That's all I have.
Anything else? Any questions or comments for Mike? No? Okay, Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee. A couple of things I want to tell you about. One is that we're finally done with our contract with the consultant, the MRB Group. We worked with them for a number of years. I have a lot of really good things to say about them. I think they really did well for us, but our work with them is done. So any work that they were doing that still needs to be done is now our staff is taking up, Norma and Samantha, and maybe there's more than that I don't know about. And there was one item that I wanted to mention. We had $35,000 that had been granted to the Human Services Coalition for help in transitioning people from homelessness to housing. The last version of that program did not work out, so we have agreed to have the Human Services Coalition work with the ALICE program. ALICE stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed, and it is administered by United Way and by 211. So the funds in this ALICE program are for eligible approved uses for people who have moved into private market rental or permanent supportive housing following an experience of homelessness. The awards to individuals will range from $100 to $500 and will include items such as small furniture or appliances, cleaning supplies, trash removal supplies, kitchen, bathroom, or bedroom supplies, financial assistance for laundry or key fob replacement, costs associated with trash removal, bus passes, and grocery vouchers. So the way I look at it is this is meant for people that are kind of on the edge and to help keep them in housing, which was what the intent of the other programs were that didn't work out as well. And Personally, I think this is a good use because it really broadens the places people can live. Previously, it was just limited to a couple of housing units, and now this is anywhere in Tompkins County. So thanks to Norm and Samantha for working on that. Do I have any questions or comments on this? Okay, thank you. Next up is the Downtown Facilities Special Committee. Randy Brown, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. We haven't met since our last legislature meeting, and we're not going to have a meeting in April. The plan is for whole architects, along with our Planning Sustainability Department, to present to the State Historic Preservation Office in April to get some feeling of whether they're going to be okay with us removing some buildings. And we should find out that in April, hopefully. But we did put on the facilities infrastructure meeting a discussion on what deconstruction really is, because if we're truly going to deconstruct these buildings, it could be expensive, and we wanted to find that before we get in the middle of it. So.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Randy? Okay, thank you. Next up, Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Lee Shurtleff, Chair.
Thank you. Facilities and Infrastructure has not met since the last meeting, but we will be, last legislative meeting, we will be having our March meeting Thursday morning, the 20th at 9 a.m. here. And just a note, we are looking at a potential reschedule of the June F&I meeting. It falls on a holiday, so I'll be polling the committee here and advising you of the change. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Lee? I have one. Lee, as the, I'm thinking it's already a little late, is the season road and bridge construction, maintenance, repaving plan out for the county?
We haven't received it yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see it Thursday or soon after.
If you think of it when you get it, if you would forward it to all legislators, I would appreciate that. It's always good information to bring back, especially to the rural towns.
It is.
Thank you. Next up, Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Government Operations met on March 6th, which was after our previous legislature meeting. We had a good discussion with Jay Franklin about the annual equity maintenance program. It's always fascinating when Jay is there. We all learn a lot. We talked about the department goals for the various departments that report to GO, and had some good conversations about that. Monica Salvage, our new communications director, was there and gave us a very thorough report about everything she's been working on for the past month. And I'm sure it's overwhelming to be new in this position, but she's doing a lot of great stuff, including starting to track articles and references to the county and county departments in the news, which is got to just be massive. So she's working on how to track that, which I think is fascinating. It was kind of a short meeting, so I will leave it there, but two other reminders. You all got an email from Katrina saying that you need to fill out your annual disclosure form by, the date is April something?
May 15th.
May 15th. So please do that. It takes a couple minutes. We all fall under having to fill out that financial disclosure form. And we are moving forward with interviews for the Library Board of Trustees. That press release has gone out. We welcome anyone in the community who is interested in serving. You can reach out to the legislature clerks and fill out an application. We will be having a process whereby a few of us, including Rich John, myself, Dan Klein, and Susan Curry, are going to be looking at the applications and interviewing folks. So, and then we'll decide who to offer the positions to after that. There are currently 3 vacancies on the library board and 3 vacancies at the end of this year. So we're looking at that. Finally, as you all know, GO is the crown jewel of committees, and we had about 95% compliance in wearing clothing of a color that matched our agenda. So we are going for the trophy again this year, and I wish you all luck in trying to beat us.
Questions or comments for the crown jewel of committees? Okay, thank you. Next up, Health and Human Services Committee, Travis Brooks, Chair.
We have not met since our last legislative meeting. We actually meet tomorrow. On our agenda, we'll prioritize our goals, and we will hopefully finalize the process for what looking at OHR will look like. That's all I got.
Questions or comments for Travis? Okay, thank you. Next up, Housing and Economic Development Committee, Greg Mezzi, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. We last met on Wednesday, March 5th. We had a crisp meeting in under 50 minutes, I think. So we were efficient in getting the work done. As you see the fruits of that on the agenda. Also had an interesting discussion about short-term rental trends, changes to state collection and occupancy and sales tax, and there'll be further clarification for committee members based on that discussion coming out at some point. And it looks like we have an item on the consent agenda that was pulled. So I would like to go ahead and move Resolution A, budget adjustment, Tompkins County Workforce Development, new grant acceptance, New York Systems Change and Inclusive Opportunities Network, Office Mental Health, Youth Employment Program, and Renewable Energy Training Initiative Office of Just Energy Transition, ID number 13101.
And Randy seconds. Discussion, Randy.
Yeah, I wanted this pulled because I don't want it buried on the consent agenda because there's a lot going on here. And maybe if you, I was most interested in the youth employment program. And was that money planned ahead, or is that a surprise grant, or?
Let me pull up, sorry, technology's catching up to me. My understanding was this was new grant funds that came in, and I maybe would look to Bridget or Norma to correct me if I'm saying something out of school. But these were new funds received that the office had put in requests for and were able to get, if my recollection is correct.
Okay, I'll hook up with workforce development and understand a little more. I know what the youth employment program is. I think some of that goes through the Ithaca Youth Bureau, but I think it's good news, and I just wanted to understand more about it.
Yeah, so there's three grants, I believe, if I'm reading this correctly. There's the 30,000, the 376,000, which expand the summer youth employment program and the youth employment program for specific communities to help reduce gun violence and youth criminal justice involvement. And then there was 90,000 awarded for renewable energy training initiatives. So that's all new program money, and that helps with supporting their some staffing, some outreach, majority, program expenses, and that's what I think those subcontracts are for wages that support those programs.
Thank you. Deborah.
Yeah, this kind of a resolution raises a question that I think we're going to have to grapple with as we go forward this year and maybe for the next 4. As I understand it, these are state grants, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I wonder what our normal process is for these grant resolutions, because it seems like we get awarded a grant, and then we decide we're going to incur XYZ expenses to use that grant up. I wonder, to what extent do we pass these resolutions in anticipation of receiving grant funding? Because I would be reluctant to move forward authorizing expenditures on the assumption that we're going to get grant funding, when it seems to be the case that Washington can just decide that we're not going to get grant funding. So I would be interested to know how administration plans to deal with this going forward.
I think it's my question. So most of the grant program that we have are reimbursable. So we have to actually spend it before we claim those reimbursement. Usually when we identify a grant opportunity, the department apply for it. We get approval of being offered a grant. Then we amend our budget to actually spend against that grant. And then any incurred expenses is then submitted for reimbursement. It is a difficult question based on what is happening at the federal level, because we can tell. And also, that doesn't mean we have to stop our programming because of lack of knowledge of what is going to happen eventually. Most of these services, most of these programs are not, we don't receive the funding, unlike just like ARPA, before we spend it. We spend it before we submit those bills to be paid. So it reflects various programs that we do throughout all the department, be it under Medicaid, be it under all sort of programs that we run throughout the county. So it is difficult for us to make that decision of shift of not knowing whether the funding will come in or not. All the programs that we run through similar models, and it's difficult for us to stop serving the community on the basis that we are not sure whether we are going to get the reimbursement for those programs or not. But every single amendment that we do in the over here is because we have received notice of award and we have sign of accepting those awards.
Well,
it's difficult, yes.
That's interesting.
Mike Lane.
Deb, thanks for that. That's very perceptive in thinking about that. I know maybe Maury could respond to me, but it seems to me that if we expended a lot of our money based on an offer of a grant and they didn't give it to us, we could bring a lawsuit for saying it's detrimental reliance on what they were saying we were going to do.
We could do that.
Without any assurance that any related order would be complied with.
Exactly.
But I mean, basically, the thrust of the litigations that have been brought, particularly the Rhode Island action brought by the state attorney general with 22 others, is to address that type of situation where funds have been expended and all of a sudden the portal closes to get your money back.
But that's just one district judge, and
it's a nationwide
have you
injunction, and that's in my last report 2 weeks ago where I talked about whack-a-mole. That is the case where the attorneys general have gone back a couple of times seeking orders directing compliance with the order, because once those, it's simple to shut off the portal, but even if the federal government is acting in good faith, it's much more difficult to open it back up and get the funds flowing appropriately. But at the moment, there is a court order that is supposed to keep all these appropriated funds flowing to the right places.
well, if I may, I would draw everyone's attention to the fact that the filing that the administration has made with the Supreme Court about the deportation suggests that they don't consider a federal district judge's ruling to have nationwide effect. So that issue's now before the Supreme Court.
That may reflect a lot of hot air.
Well, it may, but I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that we are trying to march our way through a budget on quicksand.
I did hear something on the news this morning that there was a farmer who, in our region, who basically has a greenhouse operation that supplies food pantries. And what she said, and I thought it was a great quote for an average farmer, which was, we can't stop, we can't slow down. If we have to, we'll find another way to get it done.
Randy.
Actually, I've heard from quite a few smaller farmers that they are being impacted by some of the federal grants that were out there, so, and not in a good way. The other reason I brought this up is because I see a lot of effort going towards workforce development, and that's great. And Cornell Crop Extension just received over $700,000 from a grant from out of the area person, not a government, for doing almost exactly the same thing, renewable energy training stuff, and over the next 2 years. And they're going to be doing training, and 6 of those slots are for women. And that's supposed to start later this year. But I just see things going on, all this money we spend on these workforce development things, and it's great, everybody's doing their thing. But I'm not so sure that one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing sometimes. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. And I really like this, and I've got an example of that, but I won't throw it out. So I just think that we should be bringing this together. It's a lot of money, and I think that there's some collaboration that could be more efficient. So I wanted to share that.
Rich.
Yeah, not to get too philosophical, but Deborah, you raised a good point. Looking at government, if you had to reduce it to one word, you could say it's trust. The voters elect us trusting that we'll do a reasonably good job and make good decisions, and we trust our staff to execute. And in the same way, we trust New York State and the federal government that they will keep their commitments, but they also need to trust us, and that we are the arm, we are the delivery vehicle for so much of what New York State and the federal government tries to do. I think we are at a point right now where it's very difficult to trust what the federal government is asking us to do or not asking us to do, because they're not really telling us. And they seem to be making radical changes without discussion. And it's, as a local elected at the county level, it's really scary, because you want to know that you can trust the federal government and New York State. And New York State may get hit by what the federal government is doing and have to impact us from that direction too. The uncertainty creates what I would call an uncertainty crisis, and the natural reaction is to freeze until you know. But in this case, freezing, waiting until we're sure would mean these youth wouldn't get jobs this summer. And I don't think that's okay. So we were in the, and I'm mainly saying this for the benefit of our audience, if there's 2 or 3 people out there, that we're going to take a risk. I think we have to. We have to say, we're going to pass this resolution, we're going to accept this grant on a reimbursable basis, and we're going to do the best job we can on the local level to produce these services for the people who need them. And if it turns out our trust in the federal government is misplaced, as the farmer said, well, we'll find a way.
And as Mike suggested, we'll figure out how to sue them.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, I will support the resolution. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Rich, for bringing it back to the resolution. I think our prior conversation sounds like a great one to have in BCP to figure out how we accept grants. I think that would maybe be a better place for that. One of the things, and Bridget, Norma, Lori, or Corsa, this says federal aid here, but I understand that these are state grants. Is it because money originated from the federal government and then came to the state and then came to us? That's why we put it under federal aid? Okay. So do we know, are we in possession of the funds for this grant, or these are all reimbursable grants? They're all reimbursable grants. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that that was clarified. Yeah, I mean, I think that our department should be commended for going out there and seeking to find, gosh, almost $500,000 to solve the issue. And I think, Randy, to your point, our Tompkins County Workforce Development Office is trying to act as that convener and one of those funnel sources so that we can channel to IAED Workforce Development, to the Green Energy Warriors, am I saying that right, Rich? And, you know, a couple of those places. So they're trying to be that link that's plugging people together and being the convener for things workforce, where some of their work doesn't directly result in sort of the training and development of the workforce, but connecting and plugging into those resources. And a lot of what this grant is paying for is, you know, the human resource to be able to do that. So I just want to make sure that that's, and then also wages for our youth employment.
Okay, we have not yet voted on Resolution A. Are we ready to vote? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Anything else from the HED committee?
Nothing else to report. Our next meeting is the first Wednesday in April, which will be the 2nd at 3 o'clock.
Very good. Thank you. Hey, before we go on, I'm just going to throw something in. I wasn't going to mention this tonight, but it got brought up twice. I have been looking into a little bit this issue of federal funding for agriculture in Tompkins County and what might be threatened, and I wasn't ready to report on it yet. I'm still not ready to report on it, but I'll say this on camera. If there are people in Tompkins County who were supposed to be getting agricultural grants and they've been canceled or threatened, please contact me. I'm trying to collect some stories. All right. We are now moving on to the Public Safety Committee. Rich John, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. The Public Safety Committee has not met since our last meeting. We will be meeting next Tuesday, March 25th at 1 o'clock. And the only other information, I just want to give our jail stats for today. We have 65 in our jail with 8 board outs.
Wow. Questions or comments for Rich? Okay, thank you. Tompkins Intergovernmental Relations Committee, Shauna Black, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. We meet once a quarter, and our next meeting is scheduled for, let's see here, May 7th. I did have some really good conversations this past week. Our representatives have reached out and asked about the status of TCAT and what's going on. So it was a good opportunity to talk about a few other things. I spoke with Josh Riley last week, also met with his deputy director, his regional deputy director Friday, Evan, and we talked a little bit about what's going on the federal level, some of the feedback that he's received. Also had a very long conversation with our Assemblywoman Anna Callis yesterday, updated her on TCAT. She talked about some of the money that she's trying to get for Tompkins County. We also talked about our county emergency services and the rapid response model. Talked a little bit about expanding that and how to fund it in future years. So I think that's going to be a longer conversation than the 2 hours we spent on the phone. And I also spoke with Leah Webb Thursday, and somewhat of the same conversation. She was concerned about TCAT, so updated her on that. As far as our meeting in May, we will be joined by NISAC as well as Austin from Senator Gillibrand's office, Harris from the governor's office, Charlie from Cornell, Amy Kremenek from TC3, and Josh Riley is scheduled right now to attend our meeting. However, it's just going to depend on what his schedule looks like.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Shauna? All right. Next up, Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Veronica Pillar, Chair.
Thank you. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee has not met since our last meeting, and our next meeting will be next week, Wednesday at 3 p.m. in these chambers, which is March 26th. Yes.
Questions or comments for Veronica? Okay, are there any individual member filed resolutions? No. Minutes of previous meeting, March 4th, 2025. Does anybody want to move that? Ann moves, Randy seconds. Discussion. Veronica.
Not wanting to change anything, but just I scrolled through these minutes and something that stuck out was the full list of words that the federal government is targeting that Amanda read partially last time, but requested the full thing be included in the minutes. And it's just striking laid out like that. So thank you.
Deborah.
Further to that point, as you all probably know, our son's at Columbia working on a degree in biochemistry in some specialty that I can't even name. But anyway, he noted that the Doge Bros have now targeted any grant that has to do with biodiversity, not realizing that biodiversity is not a DEI initiative.
Any other discussion about the minutes? Ready to vote? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Is there any unfinished business? Okay, in just a moment, we're going to adjourn and come back into executive session in a little while. When we come out of executive session, I do not expect to take any action. We've had a request to add an executive session item, so we will have 3 executive sessions. One for the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities, or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. And 2 executive session items for the collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. Can we have a motion to go into executive session? Randy moves, Travis seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute recess and we'll come back in executive session. Thank you, everybody.